Oh wait, shit. Okay, well, we start the recording. I have to figure out where to send it later, I think. But yeah, so welcome to this is the third episode, am I correct?
We're here, man. Episode
So
3.
we're a little bit behind schedule. I had the Rona, and this is the mustache from the Rona. I'm gonna grow it out till I get my smell back. And yeah, and then so Tommy, you want to kick us off with the so apparently Saint Ignatius um, had a check-in thing where he called what is it that what are the two things, the consolation and desolation of your life? Did you want to expand on that real quick?
Saint Ignatius had his examen, is what he called it, and it was his main spiritual exercise, like a kind of daily check-in. Best done in community or in a cross-country partnership from LA to Detroit. But yeah, some of the language around it, the language that Lindsay and I use is what's your consolation and what's your desolation. What makes you come alive and what brings you down. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'll share real quick. Um, I've been here in Detroit. Lindsay actually flew out to the OC to spend time with her mom and the nephews last week. So I've been in monk mode here, and it's been really good. Just an opportunity to read and reflect and do a lot of writing, and it's brought my introvert self alive for sure, and that's been really good. Um, Desolation, yeah. I mean, I'll share a quick story. On Saturday morning, I woke up, and pretty soon after I woke up, a little bit after 8, there was some sirens. The medics showed up next door, and next door to me, just to the east of me, is an RV that's parked on the property of the next door neighbor, and you can see that the RV is it's connected with electric and water to the house. And I've talked to the guy who lives in the RV a few times. Really, really friendly guy. Um, well, the medics came, and they went into the RV, and they came out 20 or 30 minutes later, and I didn't really think anything of it. And about 5 or 10 minutes after that, I heard some commotion out there. There was yelling, screaming, crying, um, and it was 3 women, younger women, who showed up, and they were just yelling, "You killed my sister! I can't believe it! You killed my sister! You need to go to jail!" And at that time, the cops had showed up, so there were police officers over there. And so it turns out that a woman about our age OD'd and died in the RV. Um, and it was this just whole situation where one car after another showed up. We're like an hour and a half into it. There's like 20 people out there all waiting to see this woman. They're all her relatives. Her mom shows up. She shows up, beelines it across the property. You need to go to jail. You killed my daughter. That's my daughter in there. I need to see my daughter. Of course, police officers don't let her in. So it's this thing, this ordeal that goes on for 4 hours, and the medical examiners show up, and of course they just go right back there with their white van. They take her out, put her in a body bag, wheel her out, put her in the van, and the van takes off. So none of the relatives got to see the daughter, the sister, the woman's son, who was a teenager, was out there wanting. I mean, just horrifying. It was just heartbreaking, unjust, horrific.
Yeah.
Um, so it was
So
heavy, and I still feel it.
wow. So everyone is the guy black, the guy in the
Yeah,
RV.
yeah, everybody was black. I mean, the guy who lives
So
there, the woman,
so how old is he?
he's probably um, in his early 60s, I would say.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
yeah.
So we sadly we can assume it was fentanyl, right?
Mm.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
not that long ago there was a black guy laying cold dead in front of my 7-Eleven here on the corner. And I was like, what happened? And it was the coldest night of the year. So I was like, what happened? Did he freeze to death? And the security guys there were like, no, there was somebody here. And they knew both of them. And they were like, so and so was here, Flat Tim was here, whatever. They all have these funny little nicknames, right? They're these homeless people that unhoused people that are denizens of that 7-Eleven. Yeah, they're there all the time. And so they're like, yeah, Little Slim was here, but he just took off. And had we known, we would have called 911. But Little Slim just took off, and then later on, we noticed, he was just keeled over, and he was dead. And then so I said, oh, if there was someone else here and he ran, I was like, it's a fentanyl overdose. And they were like, yeah, you think so? And I was like, come on, that's what it is. These guys would survive if they would just call 911, administer some Narcan, they'd live. But these junkies always run off. And sure enough, it was there the next day, and they were like, oh, hey, yeah, it was a fentanyl overdose. And then he realized, he's like, oh yeah, he's like, you said that, didn't you? I was like, I hate to say it, but I told you so. It's sad, and that's probably what happened there too. I mean, although fortunately this guy did call 911. So, again, it happened with another friend of mine, actually. This guy didn't tell anyone until the next morning, during which time he went into his apartment, stole his guns, and, blah, blah, blah. This guy's, it's like murder. He could have called 911 right then and there when they were in their hotel room overdosing. But instead, he let him die, ran to his apartment, grabbed his guns. Yeah, unreal.
Yeah.
Uh, Addiction, it just,
Mm.
it's sad. It's really sad.
Mm.
So I can see the desolation in that. That's rough. And that also goes to show you how deep, this network is. 20 people, that can show up in the middle of the night, on the drop of that. So that means 20 times, two, or three that are actually part of her close network.
Oh man.
Is just 20 that showed up at that moment.
Just like that, just showed up.
Yeah,
You know.
the degree to which the knock-on effect of this addiction epidemic, and it be, for the first time in history, addiction is now the leading cause of death for young people's, it never used to be. It was always accidents.
Oh yeah.
And now, before fentanyl, believe it or not, there was only a few thousand people a year that died of drug overdose.
Wow.
It was very
If
small.
fentanyl's affected that much, huh?
Well, I have a friend of a friend whose daughter died smoking weed at a party. Somebody handed her a pipe, innocent, just
Wow.
weed, and she died of a fentanyl overdose because they put it in everything now because it sells better. If you they're putting fentanyl in crystal meth, cocaine. They're putting it in everything now because it sells better. That's why
Yeah.
the fentanyl overdoses are so high, because no one's buying heroin now that doesn't have a little bit of fentanyl in it. And the scandal of it is there's something like 50,000 genuine, authentic prescriptions for fentanyl, and the manufacturers make 90,000. So they know 40% of their product is going to the streets. Which is why so many of them are, that all of these companies are under investigation. I mean, the feds know that this is just crooked. And then of course there's the TV show, I think it's on Hulu or whatever, called Dope or Doped, with Michael Keaton, plays a local doctor in West Virginia, and kind of starts there where they're assured that it's non-addictive, and so he just starts prescribing it, and he's like, oh, I guess it's a miracle drug, and it's great because and it goes to the Sackler family, right? And I'm like, Sackler, as in the Sackler wing at the museum there, this famous museum, it's the Smithsonian Museum in New York City. And sure enough, they are having dinner at their wing, the Sackler wing, of the Met, and these people are so pathological that the family members are sitting there with their lawyer, and he's like, tell my brother he's a piece of shit. My client would like to inform you that you're a piece of shit. I mean, this is how pathological that family is. And they very deliberately and knowingly just engaged in, it's just all this stuff about corporate criminality that no one ever thinks. These people, they're killing people, they're causing tremendous social harm, and they know they will never face criminal charges, and so hopefully that will change. Once it affects enough people's lives, especially privileged white people, which it has. I mean, fentanyl is destroying rich white neighborhoods, and which is why we hear about it. If it stayed in the hood, it would have taken a decade for it to hit the news. So yeah, no, it's insane. That's why we need regulation. The increase. I don't know if you know about the recent study that they did, finding that they did a raid, and they found that major corporations, Ford, GE, major corporations were hiring 12-year-old undocumented. So we're right back to the Gilded Age, where child labor is a common thing. And so years ago, a very middle of the road, let me see if I can type here. Chat. Oh, this is the wrong one. How do I do the regular? Oh, here we go. Comments. So I'll post this up here. The 23 Myths of Capitalism by Ha-Joon Chang. I don't know why I can't type. I'm having major problems with this computer. That's why it took me so long for me to log in, by the way, Tommy. So it's called The 23 Myths of Capitalism by Ha-Joon Chang. You can look up any kinds of videos. And, he says, here are the myths of free market capitalism. He's like, and one of the first ones he points out is that there isn't and has never been a free market, and we'd never be able to have one. And the first thing he points out is capitalists will always hire little children slaves first. Child slavery will always be the bottom, the bottom of the barrel for capitalism. It's the way it works. They're the most exploitable, most vulnerable. You can chain them to machines for 12 hours, make them shit their pants. And that's just the way it works. And we're right back to that place. I don't know if like a lot of these, like, chicken factories and, some of these really egregious places, we're right back to that thing where employees have to piss their pants. Amazon, these employees, to meet their quotas, have to piss their fucking pants. I mean, while Jeff Bezos goes to the moon, it's just
horrifying.
It's absurd, yeah. So anyway, let's
you were examined.
Yeah, so my examine, so consolation and desolation, once again, is going to be more or less the same thing, demonstrating the duality and paradox of our postmodern condition. So my desolation is that my life is just plagued by ADHD, inability to focus, inability to accomplish very simple tasks, the contradiction and the self-judging, the self-loathing of, hey, I'm really good at higher functions. I can learn complex things. I could hold many disparate perspectives and things simultaneously, which is usually something very difficult for most people to do, which comes natural and easy for me. Yet my basic self-care, doing basic things, being on time, just things that you would think are just the simplest things that quote unquote normal neurotypical people find it. You don't have to think about it. So the consolation is that I've identified that that's what it is. And of course, I was diagnosed with ADHD a long time ago. Too late for me, though. I mean, I literally had already graduated from college by something that should have been diagnosed as a child. We even read little papers on it. But the problem is, they start introducing, when you and I were in middle school is when they first started formally introducing, look, there's this thing ADHD, and here are the symptoms, and everyone would laugh and say, oh, this is Charles, inappropriate comments, making jokes at appropriate times, all the things, and they were just like every single time, they were just laughing and saying Charles. And what the jokes hid from me and everyone else was, it was the reason usually why people were underperforming in school, and no one was overperforming more than me. So this was what they cited once I graduated from college. They're like, well, your intelligence covered over how we usually identify people start doing poorly in school. I was able to fake it so well that I literally even made it through grad school. Um, it covered over the fact, and so blessing is a curse is a blessing. It's very unfortunate. I just the experience and the difficulties of dealing with the ADHD are just becoming more and more acute as it continues to really just kind of crumple my life. It's it's a big struggle, but now that I know, that I need to really key in on that, that's a consolation, so I am looking at the bright side of things. Yeah. So during President's Day, we had these crises, and so we kind of did miss that, but that would have been an interesting day to do our episode. So this is sort of making up for the time that we missed. So we had President's Day, which celebrates Lincoln and Washington's birthday. So George Washington, he was a failed British officer, right? So he was unsuccessful, retired, a loser.
Charles, let me interrupt you real quick.
Yeah.
Will you check your microphone?
Is it going in and out?
It sounds like it's just ruffling up against your shirt, and it's just a little sensitive.
Oh,
So
okay. Is that better now?
Feedback. Oh yeah, that's
okay.
clean. All right, back to George Washington.
Yeah, no. So George Washington, then during either the 7 Years' War, which is the French and Indian War in the North America was called the French and Indian War, which was the 7 Years' War in Europe, and I think it was during that time, or it was during the actual Revolutionary War. I can't remember which. But as we know, American democracy owes a lot to the Iroquois Confederacy. That was a democratic confederacy between 5 tribes. The Seneca tribe, I believe, was the prime thing, and this chief had a vision of 5 flames coming together as one, and so he went to the other 5 tribes and shared his vision, and they all agreed to join. And during the war, 2 of the tribes sided with the French, 2 of the tribes sided with the English, and the Seneca stayed neutral. Or it was they sided with the British and the Americans, which I'm sorry, I forgot which war. And so in retribution for siding with the enemy, George Washington marched into the neutral tribe and burned him to the ground. So their name for him is Burner of Log Homes. So, which perspective are you looking at from history? And by the way, that historical factoid comes from Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. So, I urge all of these militia geniuses who pretend like they're such great Americans and they love patriotism and rah rah America. If you haven't read People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, you are not part of the conversation. You don't know anything relevant. You can read minutia about World War II history. That's pure propaganda about how important U.S. military victories were to beating the Nazis, which itself, you get caught up in the minutia of tactical stuff about how they hit an artillery battery on Normandy without realizing that that the Nazis spent 200 brigades fighting the Soviets and 6 for all the other allies. So yeah, there goes your claim to fame, guys. I mean, you have these preposterous narratives. When Churchill himself said, about winning the war, it was we did what we did, but it was the Soviets that tore the guts out of Nazi Germany, right? And
Mm.
Churchill was a gigantic piece of shit, very conservative and a bastard and a low life and all. He was your classic degenerate of the ruling class. But even he admits, So again, there goes your narrative, of the glorious,
Mhm.
the greatest generation they call them. I think the new name they call the boomers is something like the dormant generation or the silent generation. Or have you seen this? I think
Mm.
they're called the silent generation. Oh, no,
Why
the greatest
silent?
generation, not the boomers, excuse me. They're calling
Let's see.
the what we called the greatest the greatest generation, which is pre-boomers, the parents of the boomers. We called them
Yeah.
the greatest generation, and now they're calling them, I think, the silent generation. Basically the people who were like, "Hey, the status quo is great. I'm not going to raise my see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil." And this also goes back to my contention that we are in a post-political era. I always say this, that there's no more politics. It's just about emotional intelligence. I think I need to expand that a little bit and say, due to the absence or lack of emotional intelligence, you get caught up in that fear. You go into your reptilian brain, and what happens is your prefrontal cortex shuts off because you're in that fear mode. And when your prefrontal cortex shuts off, your moral reasoning shuts off, your logical reasoning shuts off, which is why the radical absence of genuine content in terms of you know the preposterousness of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and DeSantis and Trump and the Trumpers and the Tea Party, all of that. They can't understand why they're so irrelevant, why they're so dismissed, and they're up in arms and outraged by it. We're so prejudiced against. We're such victims. Of course, everyone else plays the victim card, of course, right? Actual victims play the victim card, but they don't, right? So again, what they need to do is say, hey, I need to get some psychotherapy. I'm paranoid and fearful. I wear a pistol to church. Um, um, and um, whereas it should be black churches where they should go to church armed because they're the ones actually facing the violence. So there's
Right.
that. So yeah,
Say something, Charles, about white liberals in this mix. Then what role do the white liberals play?
well, I mean, white liberals. You give your piece on this, but my thing is, white liberals love to talk about gun control, but that ignores the fact that people of color have always had to defend themselves. White liberals don't have to defend annihilation, okay? But black veterans returning from World War I,
Yeah.
use their rifles to stop KKK clans from killing them. And the KKK's heyday was not post Civil War when they were
Yeah.
invented. It was during the what they call the nadir of race relations, which was from the 20s, 30s, etc. That period, that was the peak of lynchings. Okay, where black cities and black towns and black parts of the city were burned to the ground. There was white riots everywhere, which again, of course, it's BLM that riots, right? It's not
All projection.
right. It's projection, right? So, these black veterans came back and said, "No, you're not just going to annihilate us." So, to me, that's the white liberal thing. It's cheap and easy to say we need gun control. Yeah, I agree. White fascists should be banned from having large arsenals. Okay, but you think that black people and Native Americans shouldn't defend themselves? You know, um, the best thing to ever happen were for Comanches to get their hands on rifles. Sorry,
Mm. Yeah.
if we had given them more rifles, maybe what happened in Texas wouldn't have happened. It's a complex thing. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm anti-violence across the board, but when you've got this dedicated and concerted effort to rob, rape, and steal, do you really expect? Gandhi was very specific. Um, you should always defend your family. I don't know if you know the anecdotes. One of his followers came to him and said, um, um, you know, Gandhi, you'd be proud of me. The whichever group, whether it was the rioting Hindus or what rioting Muslims came and they killed my family and I did nothing. And Gandhi just went off on him. He's like, "You didn't defend your own family. That's the least you should do. Like, that's not what I preach, you know? You have you did your primary thing is to defend your family. How dare you let your family die, you know?" And he scolded him harshly. So, you know,
Yeah.
nobody believes in not defending yourself. And then, of course, as you know, Dr. King as well came closer to Malcolm X. That he increasingly became more and more militant. Like, look, we've got to defend our communities. But go ahead. What were you going to say about white liberals in this situation?
And I think the character in history that really kind of messed up and complexified my own commitment to nonviolence, which like you is very important in my own spirituality and politics. But John Brown, the figure of
Absolutely.
John Brown in the mid 19th century,
Hmm.
um, 1850 Fugitive Slave Act. He basically participates in the recruitment of black and white men and women with this thing that they called the League of the Gileadites. That they were willing. They took up arms and they were willing to protect any black person who was being taken off the streets by plantation owners of the South, that the law gave them just allowed them to come up and do that into the North. But Brown was willing to step up and use a gun if need be to protect black people. To
Yep.
me, that's surreal.
Yep, there are lots of anecdotes of that. Also, in I think it was either I don't know, it was Tennessee, Missouri, or one of the places right next to Kansas. Sorry, my geography. And remind people, you were a Jayhawk. You lived in Kansas. You went to
Lawrence,
University of
baby.
Kansas. Yeah. So also Lawrence, the site of a major the U.S. Army machine gun striking workers. So there's that. Of course, we're not taught that in school, but anyway, and there's a reason why. So, but right next door as well, because of the Fugitive Slave Act, you had these bounty hunters, chasing down escaped slaves, and these white, um, um, you know, defenders went, got on their horses when they found out the news, and raced from black home to black home, warning them they're coming, they're coming to kidnap you and take you back to because they knew. Look, in our state and in our neighborhood, we've got all these black people that escaped from slavery. We're gonna warn them. So this is, in other words, if you're a white ally, this is what it looks like. Okay, you've got to break the law. This is what I mean by rebellion. These white militia people think that rebellion is rebelling against the government, who are actually their allies. They're so unhinged and incoherent in their analysis. um there's no rhyme or reason. They don't have a clue of what the complex landscape of politics is. And I mean politics with big P, in terms of, understanding the complex interrelationships between institutions, people, communities, history. Um, it's a very complex animal to try and negotiate all the contradictions and paradoxes implicit within human relations beyond two or three people, right? That's what we call politics, right? So, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, Charles, I want to let you know that I put the link up in the chat, historyisaweapon.com, where you
I
can
don't
get
think you
Howard
did.
Zinn's.
I think, okay, you put
Oh,
that in the private chat. Can you
oh my
click on the
goodness.
right hand corner? Yeah.
Oh, my
Um,
bad. Comments. This is an example. Yeah. How
yeah.
do I how do we
So
get to the comments? We're gonna have to figure that out later.
on your right hand side, you'll see it says private chat, banners, comments, and click on comments.
Yeah, I clicked on
See if
comments, but
see
there's
if you
no
can.
there's no bar. There's nothing you can put it
Oh,
in. We'll
yeah.
deal with
Okay.
it
Let me.
later. We're eating up time. But
All right.
but
Well, I
uh,
think I might be able to do it finally.
but folks at home could just put
Okay.
historyisaweapon.com and get themselves a free access to Howard Zinn's
Oh,
people's
they
history of
made
the
it
United
free.
States.
That good for him. He
Oh,
must have put
it's a
it.
great
He must.
format.
So he must have put it in his estate that when he dies, go ahead and just make my book free, huh?
Yeah,
He's
and
like,
I think
I've
it was
made enough
free.
money. Uh-huh.
I think it's been
Free for a long
like,
time.
yeah, I mean, I think that there's been access for the last decade.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's, man, incredible book,
And
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 it
and and
really
you
is
know,
easy.
the other claim to fame of people's history is that hit the whatever the $1 million or the million copies bestseller list decades after it was first published. You know, usually it's something that happens right away. You know, Danielle Steele puts out a new novel, goes immediately to bestseller list. His took decades to get there, but it got there. You know,
Wow,
slow burn. You know, which goes to
amazing.
show you what relevance really looks like. You know, popularity versus
Mm,
importance,
mm,
significance, right? Like that
mm,
which is a pop trend versus that which is significantly relevant to life, right?
mm,
Um,
mm.
so
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so
Oh, yeah. 1980, first edition,
oh god, first
1980.
edition. And do you remember what the final edition was? Because think I had up to fifth. Did he put out a sixth?
Um, the last edition that I remember is right after the Bush presidency. Yeah, the 2000 election and the war on terrorism is chapter 20 of the online version. So,
Okay.
yeah, genius, genius stuff. Say something about war crimes
Oh, okay. So how many
because the white
copies?
liberals are not going to be very
Sorry, I'm
happy
just
when
looking
you.
up 2003 edition was the gosh. Sorry, I'm just very slow with the with the Google. Um, what was its final edition? 2009 is the most recent edition. So
Wow.
sorry, it's not saying here which one that is. Yeah, it just says updated. I can't see well enough, and I'm sorry about that.
Nice. All right. All the editions are going to be just good. 2015 even.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. They stopped giving it numbered editions. It just gave a date. Looks like it
Yeah.
just got so out of control. He just kept updating it. Um, yeah. So right. Yeah.
Hey,
You're right. It's just go
while
ahead.
we still got a few minutes here, tell us tell us how
War crimes.
Barack Obama is a war criminal.
Okay, so when you bomb and invade another country, that's an act of war. And so war crime is defined. The best definition we have of war crime is the Nuremberg protocols, right? So after the war, when they were trying Nazis, they needed to convict them justifiably of war crimes. Now, typically, prior to that period, war crimes had been defined such as deliberately bombing non-strategic civilian populations. Well, the British and the U.S. did that like in spades. Maybe
Mm,
even worse than the Nazis
mm,
did. Probably far worse. Actually, I'm pretty sure it was far worse. So they firebombed Tokyo, obviously Hiroshima, Nagasaki. They firebombed Dresden, which was deliberately left because it was the cultural and artistic capital of Prussia. The Nazis deliberately didn't put any heavy industry there, and so the Americans firebombed the notorious firebombing of Dresden, which was again after the Nazi Germany at that time. They're suing for peace. They weren't fighting anymore, and the Americans went and firebombed a culturally significant city. They said that the fireball in the center of the city was so bad that people outside the city that had the lungs sucked out of their bodies, right?
yeah.
So it melted, everything, all the metal is just you molten. Imagine molten metal running through the streets. They absolutely destroyed it. So they couldn't, bombing dams, things like that. These are all war crimes. So they can't, they couldn't try the Germans in a court of law for stuff they had done, because the Germans would be like, yeah, you guys did it twice as bad as we did. So the hell are you talking about? So during Nuremberg, they said that the worst war crime was the instigation of war, after which all other war crimes commence. So, in other words, they're saying, having started the war, that was the worst war crime, because all the other specific war crimes were a result of breaking the peace in the first place. So, breaking the peace, for example, invading another country, in this case, they had invaded the Sudetenland, which again, it's like, oh, you sound like a Nazi sympathizer. I'm just saying that the Western powers and their empires were absolutely horrible. The Sudetenland was a German territory, so he's not, Hitler was looking good on the side of history. He's like, well, why don't we just take back the Sudetenland? It's German after all, etc. Things like that. So they said that breaking the peace is the greatest war crime. And so, for example, with Obama, there were 2 wars that he inherited, and he expanded it to 7 or 7.5. In other words, he quadrupled the number of wars we are engaged in terms of bombing sovereign territory. Now, the biggest war crime he's committing is under JSOC, the Joint Securities Operation Command, which is, believe it or not, JSOC is not a part of the military apparatus, if you can imagine. It's a purely presidential militarized wing, and it grew by 100 times. Under Obama, I think he expanded it by like 1,000% or some ridiculous thing, right? And what it does is it borrows it borrows military assets for presidential missions, right? And this is what we call tier 1 military. So believe it or not, Green Berets, Navy SEALs, they're all tier 2 military. Okay. Tier 1 military is Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, military intelligence. Okay. A lot of people don't realize this is who, and that's why the strategic, there's an Air Force unit that flies them around, right, and drops them off into these places. And JSOC is what was responsible for, I don't know, 80% of the bombings in Afghanistan, something like that, right? And this is what we call extrajudicial executions. These people are like, death to America, drone strike, and then what a double tap is when they have a funeral for that guy that they assassinated, they hit the funeral. That's called a double tap. So this is the most extensive, expansive, most comprehensive, powerful, robust terrorist program ever in the history of the world. Okay, this is Obama. The idea that uttering a seditious statement that's illegally intercepted is an automatic death sentence anywhere on the planet. Can you imagine that? So no military force in the history of the world has been able to execute people without your judge, jury, and trial, right? For making statements. Okay. And remember, when you illegally invade, so when you invade a country A without a declaration, that way, a preemptive strike. That's what the Nazis did. Okay, that was their justification. Okay, so there is no such thing as preemptive invasion. Okay, it's what at least the 6-year war. I mean, it's illegal by law, by definition. You can't do that. Okay, so already our invasion of Afghanistan is by definition illegal. Same with Iraq. By definition, it's illegal. This is not controversial. This is just by straight ahead definitions. Okay, not just because we lied our way into the war, into both. Okay, that makes it embarrassingly illegal, but it doesn't make it any more illegal. It's not extra illegal. It was illegal that you invaded a sovereign territory. Okay, just like we condemn people who condemn the invasion of Ukraine. Okay, what did we do in Iraq and what are we doing in Yemen and Syria, etc. Okay, Libya, etc. Okay, Where was the condemnation there, right? Now, I would argue that the Russian invasion was a strategic necessity, that we forced him to do it, that by no means would any Russian leader, let's say he's just a radical socialist, leftist, communist, who's like super pro peace, would be forced to invade Ukraine, considering their collusions with NATO and the West. All Putin asked for was for Ukraine to formally declare that they will never join NATO, and they refused, in spite of the fact that publicly 10 years, 15 years ago, NATO said Ukraine can never and will never qualify for NATO, and we will never even consider it, and they are not within consideration. And yet Ukraine still refused. And if you don't know geopolitically, there's a tiny little pass in the Ukraine through which every single invasion of Russia took place, because you've got the Carpathian Mountains that run through whatever, Romania, etc. So like Transylvania is and there have been wars there for thousands of years. Okay. And 100% of them go through that little pass. Okay. Because you cannot drive a cavalry through the mountains, let alone a mechanized military with multi-ton vehicles. Okay, it's not going to happen. There's a tiny, 7-mile pass through which every invading army goes through.
Wow.
If Russia does not have the option of leaving that pass under anyone else's military control. You just can't do it, because you either have a 7-mile front or you have a 350, or 3,000-mile front, which they did have to deal with once when the Nazis came through. They came through that pass just like everybody else, and eventually the front opened up into multi-thousands, which is why the Battle of Kursk was the largest tank battle in history. They don't want that situation again. They don't want to lose an entire generation of young men. The Soviets lost more people than all the other countries combined. I mean, they literally sent teenage boys to fight panzers, and these panzers had sloped armor. They had like modern weaponry. The stuff they had jet fighters. They had they had assault rifles. Okay, and sloped armor, and they sent teenage boys to fight them with their fists. That's why the Germans developed the Krummlau, the curved barrel assault rifle. They stuck a curved barrel on their assault rifle to shoot off the young boys crawling all over the tanks.
Come on.
This is why Russians have the attitude they have. Come bring it. I will run on your tank and destroy your tank with my fists. This is their attitude. That's why when you look at the Russian mob and you look at Russian cinema, there was this wildly successful, small, low budget, poor production value mafia film called Thief, which is their word for mafia. And it was just about this older cougar who seduces this young boy who fresh out of the military, coming off the Chechen war, right? And she pisses off some people, and so the whole mob wants her dead. So they just send assassin after assassin after assassin, and he just very casually, bloodily kills them all. That's what the whole fucking movie's about. And it was just this huge success because this little boy was just annihilating these hard ass hitmen. And it was just this bleak movie, and it practically played as a black comedy in Russia, and it was just wildly successful. This is their mentality. Like, you could send the worst thing imaginable, insurmountable odds, but I could also just protect myself.
My fist.
My youth and my vigor will see me through. Right? In other words, this movie was a metaphor for World War II. Right? You could send the most sophisticated it was like a time traveling army, right? Like if you travel back in time with a modern army and had them fight, the Russian tanks weren't even equipped with radios. Their guns were outside the range of being able to hit German tanks. Okay, and they had next to no armor. They were like tin cans with pea shooters on top. Okay, it was a bloodbath. And the Germans were like, we don't understand. We just keep killing them, and they just keep coming. Right. So anyway,
horrifying.
I don't know. Wait, how did we get on this? I'm sorry. We were talking about war crimes.
We're talking war crimes. We're
Right.
45
So
minutes in.
right, that's fine. So in other words, with just to wrap it up, just to have the war crimes, the breaking of the peace. So when we break the peace, we bomb another country, and I'm talking about this global terrorist program of drone strikes under JSOC. Okay, it's a war crime by definition. Now, they say the victor writes the rules. That's the problem right now with the robust, expansive, unassailable global military hegemony of the U.S. military. I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Call out the U.S.? Say, hey, you guys are committing war crimes. We all know it. Everybody knows it. It's uncontroversial. If you've got an advanced degree and you work at the UN, they'll just look at you like, what? What do you mean war crime? How could you say that? We're the United States. I've worked at the New York Times. What do you mean war crimes? They'll laugh. They will literally laugh in your face.
Yeah.
I'm highly educated. What are you talking about? The whole world knows this. The elite class of the United States, again, here's another thing. Your white liberal doesn't know this. And what they would hate to know is that they and the don't tread on me militia guys are the only ones that don't know this in the whole world. Third world peasants that have to cook their food over an open fire know this.
Mm-hmm. They know it well.
Starving Yemenis know this.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're highly educated or grossly diseducated in the United States, you are the 0.0000001% of the world population that doesn't know this. And yet those are the two people with the most power.
A whole lot of people in American prisons know it.
Right. Thank you. There's the other part. That's the two prong, and that's a complex thing that maybe we need to revisit in episode 4. What is the connection between war abroad and war at home? What does the prison population have to do with foreign policy? And let me give you a little teaser. It's called the Iran-Contra scandal. If you don't know about that, if you don't know about Gary Webb, WEBB, again, how could you say you have any relevant knowledge to any of this stuff? If you're sitting here reeling at, how dare they call presidents war criminals, and how dare they talk about Obama? He's the greatest black guy ever. If you're one of those, go ahead, do your homework. You're so smart. Go ahead, do your basic homework. We're talking. You're not even at 1 + 1 if you don't know those things. And
who should we read on this? Chris Hedges.
In terms of which?
Chomsky,
Chomsky.
of like the war crimes stuff.
Yeah, Noam Chomsky. You can start at a very basic level and start with there's 3 by David Barsamian. There's the Lies and Empire or something like that. It's just a series of interviews that he put into transcript form into a book, and it's a quick read. We're talking, these books are like 60 pages long, and he goes through it very comprehensively. So just go ahead and look up Noam Chomsky, War Crimes, David Barsamian, Barsamian. He's Armenian, I think from Colorado. And he has a radio show called Alternative. Do you know what Alternative Radio, I think it's called?
I don't know.
Yeah, just look up Alternative Radio. It's amazing archive. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty
basic. Teaser. I like that teaser, man.
Yeah.
Episode 4 is gonna crush.
Yeah. And you can read up on that a little bit too, so that you can bring the links and resources for that, Tommy, if you could, to our next episode.
Yeah. Hey,
you're a boss.
Enlightening as ever. Going to school, man.
I go on these rants. And the stuff I'm spouting And the
It's
stuff I'm
divine.
spouting is not new. This is stuff that, right, I was talking about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And we're only just getting to it now. That's where I get it. That's where I get upset. You know, I'd like to move on with my life, okay, and engage in my own interests and hobbies and entertain myself and do what's pleasing to me, okay. But I'm talking about old shit that I found out about a long time ago as a young man. I'm fucking old now,
Almost 50.
and y'all are still just twiddling your thumb, you know, with your head up your ass. Jesus Christ.
Hey, you still don't have smell. No smell. You can't smell anything.
Shut up. Stop. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. And thanks, Tommy, again for being a leader amongst zombies. No, just kidding.
Zombie leader is what I am. Hey, love you, man.
All right. Thanks. Bye, everybody.